Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sufen, Lead for Health Data and AI at Med. A very warm welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Unlocking the AI Talent Opportunity in Medtech in Asia Pacific. Before we begin today's session, just some admin details. We will be recording the session and materials will be made available on APAMed's website after this webinar. For Q&A, we have set aside 10 minutes for Q&A after the panel discussions. Please share your questions via the Zoom Q&A function and we will pick up the questions from there. Today's webinar is jointly organized by APAMed, Bain & Company, and the Singapore Economic Development Board, where we will share insights from our white paper on AI's impact on the medtech workforce and the skills required for medtech companies to leverage AI to develop solutions, enhance efficiency, and improve patient outcomes in the region. I'm pleased to have 4 speakers with us today who will share their perspectives on AI adoption for medtech, talent needs, and how we can collaborate to accelerate AI development in our industry across APAC. I would now like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Vikram Kapoor, Head of Global Healthcare and Life Sciences from Bain & Company, to share key insights from the white paper. Vikram, over to you, please.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sufen, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening in whatever part of the world you are today. It's a pleasure and privilege to be able to share on behalf of this great collaboration we've had with APAC Med, the Singapore EDB, and Bain & Company on our views on AI talent capability. The way we'll structure the time over the next sort of 15 minutes, I'll walk you through the key insights and the key messages from the work that we've done together that the white paper captures, and then we'll go into a panel discussion moderated by Fabio to bring to life some of the key themes as we look at this tremendous opportunity ahead of us. So with that, let me jump in. So as we did this work, we aim to answer 6 questions. Firstly, where will AI have the biggest impact in the medtech industry? Where specifically in APAC could this impact be most pronounced? Recognizing that as we look at this region, especially in the medtech space, you've got some global leading multinationals and their operations in APAC, but also APAC-anchored multinationals and regional players. And so really trying to understand where specifically could this impact be most pronounced? And then linked to that is, what are the talent needs to enable an AI-empowered medtech industry in the region? And hand in hand with that, what will it take to develop the talent and broader medtech ecosystem really for APAC to play a role, and a much, much bigger role in championing AI in medtech? We're fortunate also to have a great collaboration with the Singapore EDB and looking at the role Singapore plays in the region. What role could Singapore play to accelerate this journey, recognizing the different markets in the region play different roles today? Where could Singapore specifically play a role to accelerate? And then finally, as we look at this collective ambition, where can and how can the industry come together to accelerate this transformation? So over the next 10 odd minutes, I'll just double click on each of these questions as a foundation for our discussion. Firstly, AI and machine learning are transforming the industry in 3 key areas. First is an improved value proposition. This is in terms of improved patient outcomes through better diagnosis, care algorithms, especially in markets in Asia Pacific where we've got so much of a caregiver shortage. How do you enable caregivers to be even more efficient and effective? And then, enhancing customer experience with on-demand answers to technical queries. Again, making it easier to be able to get access and an improved value proposition to all of the market. The second theme, and I think all of us have experienced this in some ways, even in our personal lives as we adopt different AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini, but productivity improvements, and how can they really play a role in improving productivity in finance, procurement, in Asia Pacific, where regulatory elements around accessing multiple markets sometimes become a constraint for organizations. Where can AI play a role to unlock that? And then medtech specific tools in manufacturing and R&D. There's a lot more broadly than just in the commercial operations, productivity improvements that enable us to uh, address many of the access needs in these markets. And then finally, where can AI unlock new business models? So what are new products and services that could be monetized? Examples, being predictive maintenance to keep uptime up on mission critical equipment, uh, and areas like that. I think as we look at where AI can be embedded across the entire chain of activities that medtech companies undertake in the region, we look at them in several different buckets. So firstly, I think on the commercial side, on marketing, tailored marketing at scale and speed, being able to help enable our sales reps with co-pilots so that when they are meeting a clinician, they have the right information on their hands, the right next best action to be able to support care delivery. And then on the field service side, as we look at a very fragmented region, being able to have the right field support and the right predictive maintenance so that you have good uptime on all the equipment that's in the region. Now, that's of course the near and clear commercial element of it. I think as you move further upstream on the manufacturing side, streamlining and strengthening quality adherence. On the logistics side, streamlining supply chains with logistics assistance. Further upstream on the clinical and regulatory side, patient adherence tools. One of the challenges very often we have in this region as you look at, life-saving therapies, life-saving devices that we want to be able to get to multiple markets. Sometimes the constraint becomes just not having the talent to be able to deliver on it. Where can AI amplify the talent we already have to accelerate filing, reduce the workload, shorten approval times, things that are cognitive, repetitive tasks? Where can it help in this journey? And then, of course, further upstream on the R&D side, uh, supporting research efforts and supporting product development efforts to make products much more fit for market. Now, this is, of course, across the entire chain of R&D, clinical, manufacturing, commercial, but also in terms of support functions. How do we enable our support functions to reduce time spent on automatic contracts and drafting, uh, adaptive learning parts on the HR learning and development side, faster decision making for our finance teams, and then improving productivity for our technology team. So, AI has an opportunity across the entire business to be able to have a meaningful impact, and specifically in markets like ours, which are disparate, have very different requirements. How do we enable organizations to be able to get life-saving drugs and therapies and devices to those who need it the most? I think as the new industry moves from embedding AI in commercial applications to R&D, the need for technical expertise also increases. So what you see on the left-hand side is the types of roles to be able to deliver what we were talking about on the prior page, uh, from technical leads, technical architects, all the way to productivity tool users. uh, the specialization of the skill set tends to be significantly higher on the top part of the page, but that's also the area where today the talent needs, the talent supply is more scarce. So how do we create that opportunity to upskill talent to be able to uh, address some of these use cases? Beyond talent development, there's a few other areas we've got to think through. First of all, in our view, to be successful in these markets, you need to expand a bilingual AI talent pools. What do we mean by bilingual? These are uh, folks who are equipped and understand both the medtech industry, the healthcare ecosystem, but at the same time are also conversant in machine learning. As we did a quick survey of the AI talent today in the region, probably less than 10% of it you could actually consider truly bilingual. Would not be a webinar without some technical hitches. So There you go. I think the other piece that's very important is enhancing healthcare data accessibility, computing resources, and funding. So uh, the right the access to data centers, the access to GPU capacity that is scarce today, but that goes hand in hand with being able to create the bilingual talent. And then finally, building just a complementary medtech AI ecosystem. So how do we get innovation across countries to come together? How do we get APAC countries to much more mature healthcare with APAC countries with mature healthcare infrastructure to drive local R&D and adoption? Again, the answer is not one size fits all for all markets, but there's an opportunity in markets that are further ahead and more developed healthcare ecosystems and infrastructure to be able to take a little bit more of a lead. And then finally, as we think through, where can Singapore build on its strengths to develop a regional sandbox for medtech development? Today, Singapore is a global leader in medtech innovation. It's home to top 30 medtech MNCs with several R&D centers in Singapore. We've got a strong local pool of 400 medtech startups and SMEs. And then we've got several programs and accelerators to be able to drive innovation. I think what's also exciting is just an ecosystem to create much more robust AI development. So given the closed loop healthcare data infrastructure we have as we move towards a natural EHR expanding beyond the public system to the private system, the move towards the national platforms like Trust and the biomed data to facilitate that longitudinal information that can allow these tools to be even more effective. And then just the continued government investments in medtech R&D and AI to support rapid prototyping. And finally, just a growing specialist AI talent pool. So a local AI workforce growth, increasing collaboration between multinationals on training programs, and just opening up to global tech talent with work schemes. And I think if we're able to put that together, there's a unique opportunity for Singapore to leverage this existing strength it has as a hub for innovation to become a regional sandbox to drive that on the medtech side. So looking forward, what role can the medtech industry play in developing capability to support the region? One is talent development through partnerships, corporations coming together with industry bodies, with the public sector, with the government to be able to create opportunities to upskill the next generation of talent, just more collaborative exploration to drive innovation, and then more proactive dialogue between organizations to be able to share some of these best practices. I think we have, if you step back, the opportunity to be able to make an impact in healthcare in our markets is so tremendous. We all recognize the challenges we've got in terms of scarcity of clinical talent, technical talent. We believe that AI presents an opportunity here to be able to really close many of those gaps and get care to those who need it the most. And we have a unique opportunity here to be able to upskill that next wave of talent with the industry coming together, partnering with organizations like the EDB, leveraging programs that are already in place in some of these markets to really make a difference. And so let me close then with just the 6 key messages that our white paper goes into a lot more detail on as we look to the talent elements of what can make the ecosystem in APAC really one that champions AI. So firstly, just integrating AI into healthcare is a transformation waiting to happen. AI is already redefining patient care. It's improving outcomes. It's streamlining care. We think AI can be a pioneer on the regulatory, manufacturing, and commercial side, bringing AI world-first applications. Because of the diverse nature of our markets, we have the opportunity to be able to really customize and create products that are for this market, for these various markets, and technology can play AI and machine learning can play an important role here. The opportunity to build this bilingual tool, talent pool, which is equipped and conversant in medical and AI machine learning will bridge a big gap that we have. I think as we do this, the markets must enhance data accessibility and build a highly complementary regional ecosystem. So creating an opportunity to leverage all of this longitudinal information, and you look at some of the more developed markets like Singapore today are arguably a little bit further up ahead in that journey, being able to leverage that. But as we see other countries in the region also moving towards that, presents a tremendous opportunity to leverage information to accelerate care in the markets. And we talked about Singapore playing the role of potentially becoming a medtech AI sandbox, leveraging all of that elements of that ecosystem that are coming together. And then I think finally, it's important and incumbent on us as a medtech industry in the region to be able to create the talent pipeline that will fill these future roles. And we look at a future where 10 years from now, people look back and see a transformation that happened in medtech in this region that was AI powered. And a lot of it came with bringing the right talent together, the industry coming together with the right government and industry bodies to make a difference. And so just wanted, very quick whistle top tour of the key messages that this study came up with. I wanted to hand over now to Fabio to bring us into a nice panel discussion where we'd love to hear more from our colleagues at the EDB and at APAC Med. And so looking forward to that, and I'll hand over to my more eloquent colleague, Fabio.
Thank you, Vikram. And first of all, welcome everyone to the webinar and to the panel discussion section. As Vikram mentioned, we will hear from Tran, who is president of Asia Pacific and Japan for Siemens Healthineers, and has been the board sponsor for APAC Med for the study. Thank you, V, for making the time. And similarly, with John Eng is with us as well from EDB Singapore, and has been one of the sponsors in EDB on the study, and as well as Vikram will be participating in the panel discussion. So I think as we get started, the first question and would be for you. So if you can start going off mute. I think a couple of things before we get started. Actually, just as a reminder, please do put your questions in the Q&A. We will use them later when the Q&A will start. But in the meantime, as I mentioned, V, I wanted to start with you and hear from you what use cases you're seeing in your organization globally as as MedTech, and more specifically, your organization starts the AI journey. What you've seen most promising in terms of use cases, what things have, as AI improved in the day-to-day work in Siemens.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me. I would just say, there are use cases obviously on the product side, and we have at Siemens Healthineers a dedicated team looking at AI within our product portfolio based out of Princeton, New Jersey. And there are many use cases along the broad portfolio Siemens has in diagnostic imaging, radiation therapy, diagnostics, ultrasound. So many product use cases using AI that I could spend hours going into, but those are along the roadmap discussions there. Maybe focusing on here in Singapore, though, because here in Singapore, Siemens Healthineers has primarily, this is our headquarters for Asia Pacific. It is primarily a sales and service headquarters site for us. And so where we are starting to see AI as a use case is definitely around productivity, right? So as Vikram mentioned earlier, how are we using our products in Copilot to help with sales productivity, help with our sales efficiencies, our operational processes for order to cash, for many different, from the time we get the quote to the time we collect the revenue. We have many different opportunities for using AI to make that whole process more efficient and productive. I have a bit of a regulatory background, so I would also say that in our sales and service offices here in Singapore, we really want to see how AI could help us with streamlining the regulatory processes to get our approvals in place for all the countries we serve out of headquarters here. So many different types of opportunities on the productivity and efficiency side for us to explore.
Thank you, Vi. And Vikram, a similar question for you again from a global perspective. What have you seen in medtech in terms of AI adoption, and also be a few examples of where that has brought enhanced productivity or actual results within the medtech value chain?
Yeah. No, thank you, Fabio. And again, it's been interesting to look at just the development of and adoption of AI across markets. And I'd say we see companies, medtech companies, drive value in three different buckets. One is, do it better. So how can I do what I'm doing today better? There's do it faster and cheaper. And then thirdly, do something new. So let me dig into each of these individually. When you look at, do it better, it's how can you use AI-powered advanced algorithms to improve diagnostics, faster disease detection, personalized insights, and healthcare plans. And so we are seeing now companies across the world really embracing that to get, radiologists to be able to make more effective and informed decisions. And again, supporting the caregivers in certain areas where you've got care extenders, being able to provide them with insightful learning that can help make a difference. There's, of course, a very important use case around do it faster and cheaper, especially in, we see this even more so in emerging markets where the cost of a medical consult tends to be, 1/10 or 1/20th of what it is in a developed market. Also, when you look at just the fragmentation we have in the markets we're in, one area we've seen very interesting interest, and I think the point we was making also earlier is around regulatory. And so organizations embracing, how do I take a 510(k) filing that was done for a medical device and leverage that and use the right AI machine learning tools to be able to get to an 80% version of a filing across 8 or 9 markets. And so now, where historically I may not have had the capacity or bandwidth to enter more than 3 or 4 markets, now I can enter 3 times as much as many markets. And so we're seeing increasingly adoption of that. And these tools have proven themselves to be quite effective in that environment. And then finally, doing something new. So how are business models starting to transform, moving towards, AI-enabled medtech as a service type platforms, subscription models. Philips has done this with an AI manager, which is an integrated cloud-based solution that creates a marketplace for AI apps in the diagnostic imaging space. So you're seeing new models emerge. You're seeing startups like, there's a company called Carpal out of India, which is doing something similar where it's creating a marketplace for different algorithms that you can start applying in an imaging sense. So can you use Lunit from South Korea, or you can use Annalise from Australia, but being able to bring the right, expertise to the hands of a caregiver that historically may not have been as easily available. And so I think to us, I feel like we are very early in this journey of adoption, but it's been interesting to see people embrace the do it better, the do it faster and cheaper, and then doing something new. I think, you of course, we talked about manufacturing commercial use cases, which in the near term probably present more potential, but I think over time there's a lot more technology can do, and we're excited. We're seeing a lot of enthusiasm. I think people have been through some version of that hype cycle. There was a lot of excitement first, then people pulled back, but we're seeing people jumping in and seeing very tangible use cases versus the view of 1,000 points of light. Now it's saying here are the tangible use cases that are making a difference. I think also what we see is medtech organizations take the lens of, it's important to not think of this as just an algorithm, but it is a transformation in the ways of working. And one analogy I've used, we've seen it's resonated quite effectively is this 10-20-70, where frankly, the transformation AI is bringing into medtech is maybe 10% the algorithm, 20% the infrastructure, and 70% the change in processes, ways of working, and the transformation that comes with it. And it's been tremendous to see that across areas. And again, we're just getting started, Fabio.
Yeah, and I think that that 70% you mentioned, right, actually shows the fact that a lot of these applications are actually moving from the POC type of idea into actual applications that are used in companies and in processes. That's where the 70% change management comes from, effectively.
Indeed.
I think, John, I wanted to bring this a little bit closer to home, to Asia Pacific, in terms of what you're seeing as the largest potential for AI in Asia Pacific, and specifically in Singapore, given the vibrant ecosystem that exists here between MNCs as well as a number of local startups, which from as we mentioned, the MNCs would be more on the commercial side, whereas the local startups probably do use AI on a day-to-day basis for their own R&D and product development, effectively. So I wanted to hear that perspective as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a very exciting space for us, Fabio. Yeah, so because we think data is becoming increasingly ubiquitous in healthcare. So therefore, then the potential for AI to impact healthcare is going to be immense. Like Vikram said, it's early days, but we're seeing the medtech companies use Singapore as a base to test and prove out the possibilities across the ecosystem we have cultivated here in Singapore. And this is across the value chain. So maybe one example that's public is Agilent. So Agilent is one of the global leaders in research instruments, specifically in the proteomics space, especially, but they go beyond proteomics for sure. They've established Singapore as a global hub for manufacturing of their research instruments, and to improve supply chain efficiency and productivity, as well as the responsiveness, right? Agilent embarked on this journey to digitize its manufacturing shop floor and its supply chain, so end to end. And they were trying out if AI could actually do that. So one of the use cases they embarked on was to see if they could automate testing process, which is previously very highly specialized but manual. Yeah. So by deploying an AI algorithm, they were able to quickly reduce that product testing cycle time by 23%. Yeah, and they've established other use cases as well, which I won't elaborate further. And today, the Singapore site is a WEF, so World Economic Forum lighthouse site for Agilent. We're seeing these opportunities in the medtech firms, not just among the large companies, but also closer to home among our local startups. So one of the startups that we are really proud of is Raspberry. It's a spin-off from our research institutes. Yeah. So many of us might be, familiar with family members who may be experiencing heart conditions. One indicator is actually shortness of breath, right? And today, detecting, heart disease is you have to go to a doctor, and it's also a very manual process. So then this inspired Raspberry to actually figure out if they could actually automate that process of respiratory monitoring. So they have managed to do so using AI, and today they've actually announced a partnership with Roche as well, so Roche Diagnostics, to actually see if they can combine their vital signs monitoring device with Roche's blood glucose monitoring systems as a joint bedside offering. So it's early days, but I think we're seeing companies take steps to experiment.
That's great. Thank you, John. I think we'll start answering one of the questions that is on the Q&A. Thank you, Akash, for the first question, which is really around the largest impediments and the catalyst that we see for AI in the ecosystem. And specifically, I think I'd like to focus both on the talent side, which is really the focus of the report. And so maybe, Vikram, if you want to start sort of giving us your views on, again, catalyst and impediments for AI adoptions in Asia Pacific and specifically in Singapore.
Thanks, Fabio. I think, I think the most critical one, of course, is talent. right? And which is the core of this report. And I think with talent, what's important to understand is truly this point around the bilingual nature of this talent. We have, in these markets, several folks who understand the healthcare ecosystem, understand the medtech industry. We're increasingly seeing a growth in AI-focused talent. It's just when it comes to that Venn diagram, today the overlap is fairly small. And so to us, I think the view here of being able to create that talent ecosystem will happen only if the industry starts to come together to create opportunities for that talent to become bilingual. Now, that could be in the form of, both local champions and multinationals starting to invest to build hubs of AI talent in these markets, being able to partner with universities, being able to do a lot more experience sharing. So I think that's one barrier that, frankly, the industry can come together to create opportunities for. I think the other barrier in my mind is, frankly, a little bit around mindset. I think there was another question that was in the chat around, historically, for many of the large multinationals, typically R&D has sat in, the home market, maybe in North America, maybe in Europe, maybe in other parts of the world. I think what we are starting to see forward-thinking companies saying we have to think about this more broadly than just embracing AI in the commercial. Typically, it's the commercial arm that's sitting in this part of the world. Think much more broadly. And so the forward-thinking companies are really starting to say, how do I expand some parts that R&D, and specifically the D part in Asia? And over time, as you start to build R&D hubs, I mean, it's interesting if you look at the amount of R&D talent that is coming to Asia in markets like India, China, and beyond. I think the seeds are there to be able to create that. I think it's the forward-thinking companies that are embracing it. But I'd love your thoughts as an operator and leader of a business in this market. This is something, of course, you wrestle with a lot every day.
Yeah, it's a challenge for sure, as you pointed out, Vikram. It's when you have the manufacturing of most of your equipment in Europe, because I work for Siemens Healthineers, and of course headquarters is in Erlangen, Germany. And from a scalability perspective, the R&D, most of our MR equipment, CT equipment is all in Erlangen or Forsheim. And we do this from a scalability perspective, right? Would it make sense to do this type of R&D or manufacturing in many countries around the world? It's kind of centered out of headquarters, and that's where the history is. The talent has been for several decades. So those are the challenges, right? And I came from Varian in the United States. Same thing. We had our linear accelerator factory in Palo Alto. So, and that's because it's been there for decades. So trying to move the R&D aspect of this outside of where it's been for decades is it's going to be a big challenge. And I've had this question, or I've asked this of headquarters to consider other parts of the world, but the answer I always get is it's scalability. So, I do think that we got to be creative. We have to think about ways of taking maybe baby steps and seeing if there are ways we could do something, a portion of the R&D, some form of something very specific, and piloting it here in Singapore based on the talent. So there's, I think we need to think very creatively, think baby steps, look at what the needs of the organization is and where the talent here in Singapore could really address that need on a smaller scale to start with, to start demonstrating success. So we've done this in other parts of the world in my career at Varian, where we've looked at other countries to just start doing some form of something very specialized. So I think from when you look at large MNCs, it's going to be a tougher battle. And I think this part of here in Singapore, because it is a hub for so many MNCs across the board, not just medtech, but you have, tech here. You've got Meta, you've got Google, you've got Netflix, you've got a ton of companies here where there is tremendous talent. So this place is a hub. It will continue to be a regional hub, I think, for many MNCs across the board. So talent is here. We just really have to expose that talent and come up with something that, as I said, taking baby steps and being creative of how to address the needs of the organization.
Yeah. Thank you, Lee. I think I wanted to say on this theme of catalysts and impediments, because historically EDB has been quite strong at catalyzing change, especially in the Singapore environment. And just wanted to get your views, John, really on what your thoughts are again on the catalyst and impediments. And I'd like you to focus more on the catalyst, I guess, that Singapore is thinking about for AI and AI medtech specifically.
Sure, Fabio. Yeah, I think I relate also to some of the points that V mentioned. I think this is the journey that we are having with many of the companies that are in Singapore. Some have mandate, and some, it's you have to work with the deck of cards that you're dealt with. We do see companies move at different paces, of course. So for example, just a couple of days ago, ResMed announced that they'll be partnering us to actually expand their digital and AI team in Singapore as well. So, but I think one key challenge that we see is just getting the talent. I think, as V mentioned, it's not talent just from the healthcare sector. It's talent all across. And that's the opportunity as well in Singapore, because there are so many industries that play here as their regional or global hub. And how do we get the word out, right? That there is this potential in healthcare and it's happening here. So I think that's a work in progress for us. But it's steps that we can take forward. So besides publicity and working with partners such as APAC Med to get the word out there, I think it's also then reducing the hurdle for experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you need to get the users comfortable and acquainted in AI. So, and it's across the value chain, right? So one example is, for example, our initiative called AI Trailblazers. This is a partnership that is led by the ministry, as well as Digital Industry Singapore, DISG, as well as Google Cloud. The goal is to find problem statements and then run sprints to actually figure out if you can create prototypes, AI-enabled prototypes. Yeah, so, and this is actually launched across the industries in Singapore, right? So one of the key industries that we have here is in manufacturing, of course, which is half of our exportable economy. One of the partners we worked with was GlaxoSmithKline. So with GlaxoSmithKline, I think one of the use cases they wanted to figure out is whether they can automate some of the data gathering processes on the manufacturing shop floor. And Singapore is a very large manufacturing base for them. Yeah, so with the AI Trailblazer 100 days challenge, they were able to actually work on problem statements and come up with a prototype that through 100 days enabled them to save 4,500 man hours. And so this sets the stage for them for the practitioners to understand, hey, AI can actually make a difference. And we think Gen AI is amazing because it lowers the hurdle, right? Not everyone needs to be a trained AI expert. The other aspect, more importantly, is actually clinicians. Yeah, so the clinicians need to be familiar with the technology as well. And here in Singapore, as our population ages, we have a challenge to actually deliver healthcare at the same standard, but with maybe less people. So what we have done even since 2020 was in early days was to actually launch grand challenges where we said, okay, let's put out $35 million. And figure out if our clinicians can work with the ecosystem to come up with ideas whereby AI can be used to better manage disease at a population level. So metabolic disease, non-communicable diseases like diabetes. Yeah, and now that I think we are now in 2024, I think it's given us a bit more confidence with the clinician ecosystem to actually do more. And our Minister of Health just announced $200 million earlier on in October as well for us to actually run more of these projects.
Perfect. Thank you, John. And I think, Bigam, you're mute if you're trying to speak.
I think, John, your point on clinicians is a very, very important one. I think many of us probably read the article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago where they had 3 scenarios where they had a ChatGPT, the latest version, do medical diagnosis, and it was correct 90% of the time. They had clinicians do it on their own, and they were correct 74% of the time. And then when you had clinicians powered with ChatGPT, it was actually 76% of the time. And the reason was there were many cases where the doctors actually overrode the ChatGPT recommendation. And as they went back and relooked, they said, oh, in hindsight, maybe I should have adopted that. So there is I think as you extrapolate going forward with the need for care evolving in these markets where patients who are only going to be more chronic, they will need to see clinicians way more. The talent shortages we have will only amplify. And so upskilling our clinicians to be a part of creating some of these solutions and adopting them will make them amplify the impact they can have. And so it was just interesting, as I was just reflecting on this anecdote where the clinicians embracing this, and when they embrace it, they see the power of it is phenomenal. It's a little bit like when, in 2020, when through the pandemic, we went through the largest digital transformation where there was a view of, will clinicians adopt telemedicine? And then as you start talking to specialists across age cohorts, they said, this is great because now I can actually spend 8-10 minutes directly talking to the patient versus looking at them, typing something in an EMR and not really engaging with them. And so I think that there is a unique opportunity here, an AI moment to enable clinicians too, and them playing a part in that.
Maybe if I jump in too, just to add to that, again, yeah, great point on the clinicians, and definitely that is a trend I see across the Asia Pacific region, right? The staff shortages is a real issue. An aging population in certain markets like Japan and Korea are real issues. And with the aging population, again, it leads to this staff shortage issue. You've got these, you have the need to upskill the physicians in ASEAN, this part of the world, right? And this is where AI could really make a difference. And when I think about, for example, the clinicians in Singapore, world-class clinicians, and if we took, and they're probably the closest to understanding the technology and the needs of the surrounding areas here. So maybe getting some of their insights into use cases, because at the end of the day, how one uses very sophisticated medtech equipment, right, is different in Europe, in the United States, and of course in this part of the world, and getting that insight is so critical as far as just the user interface. So it's super diverse in terms of how equipment is being utilized across the world, and having that clinician's perspective is incredibly important as we build this into our AI, into our portfolio moving forward. Because at the end of the day, it really is about precision. We've just got to deliver the right treatment to the right place, and it starts with the right diagnoses. So very good point around the clinician. Thanks for raising it, John.
Perfect. Thank you. And before we go on with the sort of some of the questions that we had initially for the panel, I think there's a couple of questions that may be worth answering from the audience, and then we'll move from there. I think The first one is really around, it's an interesting question because there's a lot of talk about AI. I heard some people start talking about AI fatigue. And the question is really around, what applications are overhyped versus what applications can be transformative. Now, I don't think any of us has a crystal ball. If you guys do, let me know. But for maybe we start from Vikram, maybe your views on what the future holds for AI. What is hype? What is reality?
Fabio, I was counting on you to put the hardest one in front of me first. So thank you. Look, I think it's important to contextualize. I think we're a little bit of where AI can actually make a meaningful difference. I think we are starting to see an evolution in the conscience around AI alone cannot make transformative change. It comes back a little bit to how do you use technology embedded in the new ways of working and the ways of working changes that need to come to really have an impact. That's why it's no surprise that you've started to see the first wave of AI impact either embedded in equipment or technology or in more routine cognitive tasks or more efficiency enablers. I think the potential over time of AI to be able to put in the hands of patients the collective expertise of clinicians, collective expertise of medical device companies. I think that's today, probably much further away from where we would like it to be. I think people talk about I've got the AI clinician who takes care of all of my needs. I think that there's probably a chasm we've got to cross there. But a big part of that is what is the ecosystem around it to make sure people are using AI responsibly, to make sure that people are supported, the care ecosystem around them is supporting that. So I know I'm answering your question with a much broader framing, but to me, I think that frankly, the potential of AI is something that none of us understand today. I think it'll be much, much larger as we go forward and look back, much like transformative technologies like the telephone, computer, and others. But I think what's important is to be able to make that future reality. It's important for us to think more holistically around how this is embedded in the way we do things, how that needs to change. And to me, that's the difference between the things that you see the point solutions today that are working on embedded in equipment, improving regulatory processes, improving quality assurance processes to end-to-end enabling the care delivery journey, which I think in our lifetimes will be a reality. Is that change management between that?
Yeah, maybe if I can add to that. I mean, and then Ian and John, I'd like to get your views. What is interesting to me is if I look at AI, the velocity with which the technology improves is impressive. Nothing that I've seen in my lifetime. Every 6 months you have a new model. Every 6 months you have additional capabilities that AI is bringing, whether it's mathematical, whether it's coding, whether it's ability of reasoning. In 6 months' time, I bet we'll start seeing the agents. Actually, AI will do things for you, either embedded on a website or embedded in a product or embedded in your own daily workflow. So I think that there are use cases right now that are point solutions, as Vikram said. You will see them extending to substituting processes and cognitive tasks within processes, and more of those will become almost invisible to the user. Is my suspicion. And so use cases that may seem that they're not delivering value today, they will start delivering value tomorrow simply because of the velocity with which the technology evolves. John, anything else to add? Please go ahead.
Maybe to add here, where I see it being super transformational from a healthcare perspective is when you look at AI, today I think it could be utilized for clinical decision support, right? So like Vikram was saying earlier with that example of clinicians using AI and what was their decision. what was their decision before using AI? And then, I think what we'll see over time is how much they'll start relying on AI to make their decision, right? And how much faster a decision can be made around diagnosis or the treatment with AI. So those are where the opportunities are. And fast forward into the future, will the transformation be where AI will make that clinical decision? And I think those are where the lines will really be drawn in terms of that transformation. But as I've seen it today, and this is the question I think a lot of regulators have with AI, right? Is when does the human judgment get removed and replaced by AI, and because that's where it starts and ends. Is today all of the clinicians have the human judgment on deciding what the diagnosis is, deciding what the treatment is, right? And where does AI play a role, and how far in that decision-making process does AI go? So it'll be interesting to see in the future that transformation.
So I wanted to maybe spend a little bit of time on one other question, which is the core of why we did the white paper in the first place. And I think that the key point around AI is that, of course, companies are trying to get their heads around how they're going to use it and what use cases are best. EDB, from their perspective, is supporting the medtech industry to do so. ABAC-Med as well, in terms of, again, enabling the industry. And I think the question is really around the collaboration and partnership that can be established within Singapore and within the ecosystem to enable faster AI adoption. And maybe, to start with you, given your double hatting from an ABAC-Med perspective as well as a Siemens Healthineers perspective, your views on sort of the collaborations necessary to accelerate AI adoption.
Yeah, I think the collaborations. It's going to take a village. There's I think collaboration with APAC-Med in terms of how to shape use cases, how to shape the how are we going to regulate this, right? What is how do you regulate something like AI in a medical device, right? So I go back to the comment earlier around how far in the clinical decision making journey does AI play a role. So the regulatory piece of this is key. Collaboration with industry, APAC-Med is key. I think collaboration with EDB in terms of this talent piece is definitely critical. How do we identify the needs of the MNCs, or what is the need, and how do we tailor the talent to really support that need, and getting the word out there, making sure that we're really as a whole really bringing word to the fact that there is this massive talent in Singapore, right? So there's many opportunities across the board to collaborate here to drive making an impact.
And John, again, from your vantage point at EDB, keen to hear your views on collaborations being established across the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Fabio. Again, I fully agree with B, because firstly, for AI, right, it's multidisciplinary expertise. You're drawing from talent all over, including the tech ecosystem, which hires 200,000 people in Singapore today. But besides that, I think the number of AI-enabled devices has grown. I think the stats was about 5 about 10 years ago, and we're now close to, I think it was nearly 1,000 already approved by the FDA. Of course, regulations are a work in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to require a lot of intergovernmental and public-private interface and discussion to figure out the regulations as well as the governance around this, but hopefully in a relatively iterative and adaptive process so that industry can still move with innovation as well. I think for ecosystem, for us, it's our only concern is we're not moving fast enough as a country.
Yeah.
And when we think of ecosystem, we think of at least three pillars. One's talent, second is infrastructure, and the third probably is around use cases or centers of excellence. Yeah. So we announced last year, I think, another $1 billion that we have put in as part of our sequel to our AI strategy. And the ambition there is to actually triple the number of AI practitioners in Singapore to 15,000. Yeah, so that's I think fairly ambitious for a country like us. The other is around gathering more infrastructure, so things like GPU, and the third is around then aggregating use cases and bringing communities together to solve them. We call them centers of excellence. So one example is our partnership with NVIDIA, for example. They set up over at one of our universities to actually work on use cases, train students, and then bring industry partners together. So I think this is how we think about the ecosystem play. But for companies looking to experiment, it's not that simple to navigate any ecosystem around the world. We think in Singapore, I think it's relatively condensed, and we try our best to catalyze as much as possible. So like enzymes, right? One example is I think our partnership with J&J, where they have a long-standing collaboration with our Eye Institute. So it's called the Singapore Eye Research Institute. Yeah, so I started off with about $20-30 million of collaboration. And today, I think they're at the stage of moving that forward towards ecosystem. And AI definitely is part of that. So I think as we think about ecosystem, as we build it, it's an imperfect process. But that's why I think we encourage people to speak with us if they're interested to explore these partnership opportunities in the ecosystem we are building, not for ourselves, but we think for the larger region or for Asia and beyond.
So I wanted to thank the panelists. I think we're up on time. Thank you, John. Thank you, Vikram. Thank you, V, for your time and insights. And I'll pass it back to Su Fen for closing.
Thank you, Fabio, V, Vikram, and John for your time and sharing of insights today. I just want to gather everyone for one photo before I call today's session to a close. So if I may, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, everyone, and the attendees for dialing in. The paper is now live on both Bain and APMET's website, and we do encourage you to have a look at the paper. And for our members, do speak with us if they are keen to be part of the effort that APMET is driving together with industry, and of course with EDB on the opportunities to build the talent pool in Singapore. With that, I call today's session to a close. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.